Australia never gets enough love on this channel, always overlooked by its bigger and more important continent cousins. Maybe it was the short amount of documented history or the dangerous wildlife that terrifies me, but for some reason I haven't done an alternate history video for the land down under, so that's exactly why we're focusing on it in this scenario. When we think of Australia, it's really difficult to imagine the land not being controlled by the British, even though geographically they are not close to each other at all. So how different would this land be if Australia was never colonized? And that's the question we're asking in this video. What if the British never settled the continent like they did in our timeline? Here is a couple out of the many possibilities. In this alternate timeline, the Aboriginals would have the control. The native population pre-European contact has been estimated to be around 750,000 to 1.5 million people. There was no uniform Aboriginal society, as each tribe had its own distinct culture and language. Most of the population inhabited the eastern coast, similar to the density of Australia today. There are two different scenarios I would want to focus on for this alternate continent, as there are many ways this timeline could go. Australia is controlled by the Aborigines. Many factors went into basically dooming Australia's natives from ever forming civilization, yet the main reason was Australia's lack of successful crops or animals. While the old world had wheat and cows, the Americas had corn and llamas, Australia barely had any fauna which could make civilization a reasonable option. Even trying to build a small kingdom or uniting tribes into larger settlements is practically out of the question. If the European colonists virtually ignored Australia, the Aborigines would most likely continue as they did for hundreds of thousands of years. Eventually, they could shift away from their hunter-gatherer lifestyles and adapt technologies from other continents. It's the most unrealistic of the scenarios. The last thing you'd imagine Western powers doing is avoiding a huge chunk of land just because tribes were on it. Aboriginals don't die from diseases. Just as in America, the old world diseases wiped out around 90% of the Aboriginal people. Some areas once densely populated were left abandoned by the time the British got there. If the natives were somehow immune, Australia could share a similar fate to Africa. Instead of simply replacing the Aboriginals, the Europeans invest money in establishing puppet leaders and ruling over the local ethnic groups. Different countries such as the Netherlands and Britain could split the continent up, dividing the natives and teaching them European language. Australia would still be a colony, but have a very small European minority who control over the Aboriginals. You can draw your own conclusions to how the treatment would be. With modern medicine being introduced, the population of natives would have boomed, alongside it any tensions which would be between tribes. But eventually, just as Africa did in our timeline, the new artificial nations ruled for centuries by Europe would bid for independence. In the 21st century, we could see an Australia split between many different states. Could they prosper? Would they fail? It would depend on the alternate history of this new Australia. What is your scenario on what could have happened? Tell us in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Cody from the Alternate History Hub.